بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
All right, we can start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that which is beneficial to us and to benefit us by what He has taught us and to increase us in knowledge always. He is the all-knowing, all-wise. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen wa ba'd. We are speaking on the chapter of envy, and we were supposed to finish it, in our previous lesson, but inshallah ta'ala we will try to wrap up this section tonight, inshallah. So we're on page 238, where Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, and of course we're all aware that this is an abridged version of Imam al-Ghazali's famous book, Ihya Ulumuddin. And so Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he looks to identify what are the roots from which a person, becomes envious. And he states seven causes that create envy in the heart of a person. And so in a way, this is like the psychology of envy, right? So where does envy come from? He talked about anger and spite, that anger, this emotion that we have to protect ourselves and protect our dignity, can lead us to become, if not regulated and not handled in a healthy way, can make us very spiteful, where we enjoy the suffering of other people, and we find a pleasure finding other people's failure, and then that leads you to envy, where you wish that other people don't enjoy the blessings that they receive, and you would want their blessings to be removed from them. And we also mentioned comparison. Envy envy comes from this, this nature. We have to be very comparative. So we compare ourselves all the time. And that's why we mentioned, like, people aren't usually envious of those who are in a different social economic class than them. So you're not envious of like some millionaires or billionaires unless you're in that social, economic class. Then there's that competition, right? And the comparison and the competitiveness within that class of people. If you're middle class or upper middle class, then you're competing with those people. College degrees, professionals, careers, who's making what salary, and you're looking at those things, right? And what accomplishments people have. And whatever position you're at in life, you're comparing yourself to those people who you view as kind of your equals, your people who are similar to you. And so our human nature to be comparative and to be competitive can be destructive. And so here Imam al-Ghazali, and Islam, subhanAllah, the beauty of Islam is, Islam says that these emotions of, for example, of having anger isn't necessarily a bad thing. Getting angry isn't a bad thing. Having desires aren't inherently evil. Desires aren't inherently evil. But the problem is when these desires are not regulated, when these desires are not guided under the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with reason and justice, then desires can become destructive. And subhanAllah, that can lead us to a whole new topic about, I was listening to a lecture last night. It's a non-Muslim professor and a Muslim scholar were speaking. And he mentioned, like, before the Enlightenment, you had the age of faith, like medieval. And then during, after or post-medieval, you had like the age of Enlightenment, and where reason was kind of like the the instrument by which people defined right and wrong and morals and values and so on and so forth. And today, he's like, we kind of live in this age of feeling, where oftentimes truth and morals and ethics is defined by just how we feel. And so Sharia doesn't say feelings are bad, but Sharia says feelings have to be subject to divine revelation and to reason. The reason, feelings cannot be the control, the head of the affair. Feelings don't determine what is right or wrong, what is true and false, what is just and what is not just. Feelings are not going to determine that. Feelings are what we experience, but those feelings have to be subject to revelation, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ have granted us. And also to reason. Allah has given us intellect, and we have to use our intellect to know what is right and wrong, what is moral, what is fair, what is not fair, what is healthy, what is destructive regarding our feelings. Not all feelings are good. Some feelings are healthy. We embrace them. We want to recognize them and validate them. Some feelings are not healthy. They're destructive. They're not permissible. And we want to purify those feelings. We want to regulate them. We want to manage them and in a way that is in accordance with the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in accordance with what is reasonable and rational. And so all of this is connected to this chapter, this section that we're studying, because envy is all emotion related. And once those emotions are not regulated, they manifest in really unhealthy behaviors and also can be very detrimental to a person's spiritual well-being as well as their mental well-being. Like envy can really affect a person physically. Subhanallah, like when envy is intense, and some of us might have had those experiences where, we saw something that we wanted so bad and we see somebody else attain it, and it just hurts so much. You physically feel the pain of how much you wanted that thing, and to see somebody else attain it and you don't attain it. And you start to feel physical symptoms, right? Sometimes with anxiety, people will say like they feel anxiety in their chest. Some people feel anxiety in their back. You feel it in certain areas of your body. Envy is one of those things you can actually, it can actually create physical symptoms. And you start to feel these things, and it can be really debilitating at times. Some people have really it really kind of in a way cripples them physically and mentally takes a toll on them. And that's envy. It is most kind of maybe in its more intense forms. So here we're going to try to explore, inshallah ta'ala, the causes of envy. Where does envy come from? Beyond what we've mentioned, Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he's gonna state for us 7 causes and also share some of the ayat of the Quran and hadith to kind of support his opinions about what are the causes of envy. So the first thing he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, is the first cause of envy. He identifies it as enmity and hatred. And so he says, rahimahullah, enmity and hatred are the worst causes of envy. If someone is harmed or confronted with dispute, hatred, and anger, deep envy is born in the heart. And so he continues saying, and I love this paragraph, is really powerful. And subhanAllah, we oftentimes, I was listening to Sheikh Umar Sulaiman recently, and he talks about karma and qadar. It was a beautiful khutbah that he gave, and he talks about how we oftentimes see the misfortunes of other people as karma for what they're getting. And so Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he's kind of talking about that right here. If you read, you will see how envy, when people use karma, like that's karma for what they did to me, you see that? Like he said that's just another form of envy. So let's read what he says. He says, envy leads to feelings of malicious joy when others feel grief and sadness, and such a person seeks revenge. When he who envies fails to take revenge, he wishes that harm would be afflicted on the one who envies. Right, so this is someone who cannot take revenge on a person that is, that they hate or they have some type of, grudge with. And so because they can't take revenge against them or they can't really hurt the person in a way that would satisfy them, what is the next best thing? They're envious of them. They prey on their downfall, right? They want to see this person suffer. And so this could be incorrectly perceived by him to be a reward for his closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So now this person is thinking like, yes, like you got what you deserve. Right? And they're thinking like, this is Allah like giving me justice. Right? That Allah is punishing this person in this way. Now, we need to separate two things. Right? A person can do injustice and we can identify that as injustice. But to say that their misfortune is a form of punishment for the injustice done to that person is incorrect. Does that make sense? And so that Imam al-Ghazali is saying that, like, you might hate someone and they might have a calamity, a misfortune, but now you're seeing that like, oh, this is justice for what you did to me. You see, God, Allah is just, God is just, God got me, right, or whatever, right, the statement they make. And so Imam Ghazali says, this could be incorrectly perceived by him to be a reward for his closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever he who envies is afflicted with any calamity, he is very happy. Misinterprets it to be for his sake and sees it as a reward from Allah. On the other hand, if any good happens to the one he envies, the one who envies becomes distressed because it goes against his inner desires. He may even go further and think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't avenge the enemy who harmed him, because Allah perceives him as a degraded and inferior creature. Right? So here the person, subhanAllah, I've seen this. I've seen like once, somebody say like, subhanAllah, we live in a modern time where everybody is like, a victim. We victimize ourselves. We feel like the whole world is out to get us and all the haters we have in our lives and nobody wants to see me shine. It's not that deep. People are just people. They do things, they do messed up things. But no one is intentionally like trying to target you and like, tear you down. But everybody wants to present their life like it's some dramatic movie and everybody's out coming after me. And now like God has allowed this to happen and God is not like giving me justice. And so Imam Ghazali is saying that's not the case. Right? He said this is just your envy speaking, and unfortunately the shaitan is misleading you to think that this person's calamity is God giving you justice, or this person's fortune is God neglecting you. And he said this is all from the shaitan, this is not from the deen. What happens to another person, good or bad, has nothing to do with you. That is Allah's affair. Your justice is with Allah. Ask Allah to give you justice. But to perceive a person's misfortune as like some type of retribution for what they did to you is not correct and is a form of, he's saying is a form of envy. And so here he continues saying in brief, envy is linked to either enmity or hatred. A truly pious person would never seek transgression and would hate having any bad feelings in his heart. He should not deceive himself to think that he dislikes that person and yet claim that his feelings towards that person are neutral. This is not possible. And then he speaks about, he quotes some ayat, I think we can move on. I think the point is clear. Any questions about that point?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, is it that if you was to make dua, right, and be like, yeah, let somebody wrong me, and you do like pray, can you pray for somebody's downfall?
You can pray for somebody's downfall. It is permissible, right, although it is better not to, but you can. You can. But you don't, if they've committed a great injustice against you. If they've committed any injustice against you, you can pray for them for Allah Ta'ala. You can make dua against them. But the problem is with that, one of two things. One is you have to make sure it's clear-cut oppression, not a matter of like perspective, right? Something we might view as oppression, and the other person, they might not think they were being oppressive. So that's one thing I think that's like, it has to be really, even if they don't think it, but you really feel like, hey, this is really clear-cut, like what they did was really unjust and it was unfair. Can you pray on their downfall? Yes, you can. And you can even be very specific. Oh Allah, embarrass them as they have embarrassed me. Humiliate them as they have humiliated me. A person can make that type of dua, although it is better not to. Although it is better to avoid such a specific types of dua, but to rather make it general. Right? Oh Allah, like, protect me from the evil of those who are, envious, who Allah grant me justice, protect me from their evil. Things of the sort. Keep it general. Specifics are generally like, not preferred. But it's not forbidden. A person can make that type of dua. But you don't conclude. Now here's the important part. If a person does have a misfortune, you cannot make the conclusion that this is karma for what they did to you. You can't make that conclusion. Maybe you can say you might feel like it, but you don't state that out like, yeah, this is that you deserve this, right? That is just you being that's just being hateful and being envious, because you want this person to suffer and you want them to have a misfortune, and so it is a form of envy in that case. Wallahu alam. Okay, so continuing, number 2, dislike of good for others. And this is a ta'azzuz in Arabic. He says, is when a person fears that others may become better than him, if one of his peers attains a better position, power, knowledge, or money, it gives him a lot of pain as he fears these gifts will encourage the other person to be haughty with him. So I think that's pretty clear, like, right, they feeling that you don't want good for other people, envy, because you're like, oh, I don't want them to be better than me. I want them just to stay at my level. Or feel that they might, in a way, act maybe superior to you. The other one is connected to this. Arrogant pride is when the nature of the person dominates him or her and compels him to behave haughtily with others, to humiliate, degrade, and seek that others should serve him. So the first one is envy because a person doesn't want other people to be superior to them. The second one is they want to remain superior. So they don't want other people to have their same success. Because now everyone's going to be like me. So I don't want them to all be like me. I want them to be less than me. So then that leads them to become envious. They don't want other people to have the same success they have, because they want to maintain their supremacy over others. Does that make sense? How this is different from the other one? So this is where the person wants to maintain some type of superiority over others. And so he says he fears that if people around him gained any kind of gifts that would allow them to behave haughtily with him, and in consequence they might no longer be his followers, they may even try to excel or compete with him, which would give them the chance to be better than him. We see such haughtiness and arrogant pride exemplified in the envy of the unbelievers toward the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when they said, "How can an orphan boy excel us? How could we ever obey him?" The Quran records their false allegation. وَقَالُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ عَلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنَ الْقَرْيَتَيْنِ عَظِيمٍ. And they said, why is not this Quran sent down to some great man of the 2 towns, Mecca and Taif? They were envious. They're like, how can the orphan of Bani Hashim attain such superiority over us? If this is truly they were so envious of the Prophet ﷺ, they're like, if this Quran is going to be sent down, then why couldn't it be given to one of the chieftains of Mecca or Quraysh? right? And so one of the reasons why many of the disbelievers of Mecca and many of the chiefs of Mecca disbelieved in the Prophet ﷺ was because they were envious of him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qalam, وَإِن يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. Like the disbelievers were looking at you with envy. And they would say, you are insane. And they would say that he is insane. So their envy, first of all, made them very spiteful of the Prophet ﷺ. They wanted him to fail. They wanted to see his loss. And on top of that, when they couldn't see that, they had to fabricate lies. And subhanAllah, envious people do that, right? When they see somebody achieve things that just, they wanted for themselves and they don't have it. Well, they said they only got that because, they're this. So about the Prophet ﷺ, they said the only reason he's doing this, he's a madman. It's not even anything, sensical. Don't even pay it any attention. That's coming from envy, the way they're speaking about him. And subhanAllah, we see that oftentimes when people are envious of each other, they make such remarks about each other. Those people, they're just like this. They didn't really attain that. They're just, they find any way to discredit their accomplishment, right? Any way to discredit their accomplishment, all of that is coming from envy. Those are symptoms of envy, right? And so Imam al-Ghazali says, he's describing this with the Prophet ﷺ, and even with the story of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, we see that when they said, هَؤُلَاءِ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ بَيْنِنَا, Sayyidina Nuh, when the disbelievers said regarding the believers, are these poor believers whom Allah has favored from amongst us, are these people favored, over us? Has Allah favored these people over us? That's not possible, right? And so this is all them being envied. They don't want other people to attain some sort of superiority. They want to maintain their superiority over others. The fourth, he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, at-ta'ajjub, to express wonder. The Quran narrates the description of the previous, this description of the previous nations. It declares, مَا أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُنَا, you are only human beings like ourselves. They said, shall we believe in two men like ourselves? فَقَالَوا نُؤْمِنُوا لِبَشَرَيْنِ مِثْلِنَا. This is what they said regarding Sayyidina Musa and Harun. Right, are we going to believe two men like us? أَنُؤْمِنُوا لِبَشَرَيْنِ مِثْلِنَا وَقَوْمُهُمَا لَنَا عَابِدُونَ. And their people are our slaves. Do they expect us to believe in them? They're just two men like us, and on top of that, they come from an inferior ethnic group. And so they expect us to believe us. So they're shocked by that. They're surprised by that. And that surprising, that feeling of being surprised or shocked is leading them to be envious of those of other people. And so this is a ta'ajjub. And so he says in the commentary on the bottom, the unbelievers wondered, shall we believe in a man like us? They wondered how the honor of prophethood, revelation, and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be granted to ordinary human beings like them. They coveted the prophets and wished they would lose the honor granted to them by Allah. These words emerged from their pain and horror that an ordinary man like themselves could acquire such privileges. They did not choose to be haughty, powerful, or offensive, but they exclaimed, "Aba'ath Allahu bashara rasula." He's saying this is, and these feelings are all connected. The haughtiness, the powerful or offensive, but then part of that is this shock. They can't get their mind around that. It doesn't make sense to them, right? And subhanAllah, this has been always the people of wealth feel like their wealth gives them their value. Right? And we see this time and time in the Quran is mentioned. For example, in the story of Talut, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Talut is the prophet before Dawood. Dawood fought in the army against Goliath. He fought in the army of Talut. So the Bani Israel, they went to their prophet and they said, give us, subhanAllah, the ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah. I can't recall, but they asked for like a leader, a king. And then when they asked for a leader, and when Allah Ta'ala chose, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ جَعَلَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. Allah Ta'ala has chosen Talut as your king. قَالُوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا. Like, how will he have authority over us? وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. They said, and we are more deserving of power than him. And he doesn't have a lot of wealth. قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم. The prophet said to them, Allah has chosen him over you. وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم. And he has given him an increase of strength and knowledge. He's physically capable, he's intellectually capable. And so they couldn't fathom that this man was going to be superior to them because he doesn't have money. How can he be superior? How can he be a leader over us? He doesn't have money. And subhanAllah, so human beings, and in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُكُمْ بِالَّتِي تُقَرِّبُكُمْ عِنْدَنَا زُلْفَى إِلَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. It is not your wealth or your children that bring you close to us. So this delusion that human beings have, and it's always the wealthy, because they feel their accomplishments give them value. And they define their worth by their possessions and accomplishments. And so the Quran and time again is correcting this misconception that people have, that your wealth doesn't give you any value. Your accomplishments, your material possessions, your children, your even lineage, this is not what gives you value. Your value is based in your piety, your knowledge, and your abilities and what you're able to do, what you're able to contribute. That is what gives you your value. And so what happens is when a person has that mindset that people's worth is determined by their value. SubhanAllah, even today we see it like, Americans, we treat people who are like, when we hold that American passport and we travel, we speak with a sense of like, we're like better, like we're worth more, like we're more of human beings than other people. And subhanAllah, we see the dehumanization of other people today in Gaza and Palestine and the genocide. I mean, it's all coming from this, right? It's all rooted in this. Thinking that I'm worth more. Why? Because of some possession, because of the land I come from, or the passport that I hold, or the wealth that I have. You're not worth more because of any of that. Right? Your lives are all equal in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this misconception leads people to get surprised when they see people who they see as less than them have more than them. And then he says, number 5, fear of missing an object or an aim. This takes place when two persons compete with each other to acquire one common object. Right, so this is when two people are competing. And this is hard. This is because when we're competing with other people for something, and we don't get what we think we deserve, it can lead us to become very envious of that person. And so subhanAllah, sportsmanship I think is connected to this. Like, you have to have good sportsmanship. Like if they beat you, it's okay. Don't be envious of them. And of course, in the career, professional roles, celebrate other people's accomplishments, right? Even if you wanted those accomplishments for yourself, and you were striving for it, and maybe you didn't get it and other people got it, pray for them. May Allah bless it for them. Don't be envious of them. Don't, want their downfall. MashaAllah, celebrate them. Celebrate the accomplishments of your co-workers, your peers. People who, MashaAllah, were just like you, but maybe they accomplished a lot more than what you did. right? Don't let the grief of like seeing their accomplishment lead up, don't let that lead to us having this sense of like pain, because misery loves company. So we'd rather see them fail than succeed, since we're not succeeding in the same way that they're succeeding. And so all of this, Imam Ghazali is saying, be mindful that when you're competing with people and you see people, those peers whom you're competing with or against, don't let that cause you to become envious of them and want harm for them or want them to lose what they have. And then number 6, he says, but I'm going, does anybody have any questions? Is this clear how this envy can manifest from these different causes? Okay. I don't have the online live stream up. I'm going to pull that up as well in case folks online have any comments, inshallah ta'ala. Number 6, he says, greed for fame and authority. This is where one's love for being the best in a certain field governs and controls the soul. Being obsessed with praise and recognition leads him to imagine himself a rare, unique, and matchless figure. If such a person heard of anyone on the other side of the universe who had similar attributes that he enjoys, this would grieve him so that he longs for his rival's death and destruction. He wishes that his rivals who share the same fame, bravery, knowledge, or worship, talent, or skill would lose them all so that he would be the only distinguished one in the field. Right? And does anybody, any examples run into people's minds with this? I would love to hear what examples are coming to people's minds with this. Huh?
That guy.
What is it?
I said
That guy, right? Anybody else? Any other thoughts coming to mind?
Some people who actually have great expertise in their field can be very difficult to get along with because they're just so stuck on themselves.
Yeah, they don't want anybody else to kind of rival them. They keep everybody else below them, right? And they're just like, no, I need to put these other people down so I can remain the one, right? That specialist that everybody goes to. I don't want there to be equal to me. Huh? It happens in workspaces. I think is very common. Especially people who are like, who've been there for a long time. People who have been, what do they call those, tenured, or something. They've been there for a long time, professors. And then they see this rising young professor come in and brilliant, intelligent, and they're a better speaker, better teacher, just mashallah, they can perform better than them. And they kind of like try to, block this person, right? They try to sabotage them. They spread rumors against them, or if they're in like the part of like teams to like approve hirings or tenureship for other younger professors. They're like, no, not that person. Why? Because they're envious of them. They know that this person is teaching the same subject as them, and they're just more capable. Like they're mashallah, maybe more passionate, maybe just more smarter, whatever it is. They have some unique contribution. So they want to keep that person down as long as they can because they don't want somebody else to like challenge them for their position, right? And so that can happen in the workspace. It can happen in outside of the workspace. It can happen in other settings, and so that's number 7, subhanAllah. So that's number 6. Number 7, the miserliness of the human self. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is, I think, what I think when it comes to like misery loves company, it can lead to that, right? Because we just generally want we don't want others to have more than us. So he says here, rahimahullah ta'ala, An example of this is the individual who does not care much for acquiring authority, wealth, or high positions, but when he hears that any person has been favored with a special gift, he grieves. If he was informed that some kind of calamity or sadness had befallen them, he would be delighted. He enjoys seeing other people suffer, delights in their losses, and hates that any kind of good is granted to people feeling that good was taken from his granted to people feeling that good was taken from his personal property. Subhanallah, like, you know, this is really interesting, right? Like, they're so miser, they don't want any other person to have more, and they speak as if like it's their money that's being taken from. It's like, nobody's taking from your money. Nobody's taking anything from you. But their miserliness, their greed, their selfishness is so terrible and wicked that they treat other people as if they're taking from them. So they don't want anybody to have anything more. Although they themselves are not competitive. They're not competing. They're content with like, oh, I'm okay with where I'm at. I don't need more than this. You know, I'm not trying to compete with these people. But if these people try to get more, it's like, how can they? You know, they're this and they're that, and they're putting them down. And so this is a part of the miserliness of the human self. Thus, Arabic distinguishes between the two terms, al-bakhil, which is miser, and al-shahih, which is stingy. The former withholds his own property from others, and the latter longs that rich people withhold their property from others. So bakhil is the one who's just bakhil with himself, right? Bakhil with himself. He doesn't want to share what he has. Shahih is worse. Shahih is worse. Shahih, he doesn't want other people to give as well. Does that make sense? And subhanAllah, the Quran says, وَأُحْضِرَتِ الْأَنفُسُ الشُّحْ. And the human soul has been inclined to be shahih, which is inclined to be stingy. Not just stingy with their property, but even stingy with other people's property. And so this is an illness that can show in the hearts of people. And just because you're a Muslim doesn't mean you're immune to it. This is a natural human kind of condition. And so this is something the believer wants to be mindful of. SubhanAllah, you see how important it is to study these sciences, because Islam is more than just rituals, right? Islam is more than just halal and haram. Islam is inward and outward, right? And so Imam al-Ghazali, he's capturing these really subtle states of the heart, and how they show and the subtle differences between them. Such a person dislikes that Allah Ta'ala sustains others even without having any feeling of hostility or enmity towards them. This arises from wickedness in the soul and his nature being diseased. And so we'll finish these last two paragraphs maybe. He says, rahimahullah, there's a comment I actually before I continue reading. He says here, I don't know if it's a brother or sister, they're saying that they are younger and more innovative because they can't keep up with the changing times. Like a person who treats a person who is maybe they feel are less than them, they want to hold them down. Yeah, absolutely. And this does happen with older folks when they see, right, those who are, again, in those positions for decades. I know a friend who was working as a sheriff for over a decade, and he's like, you know, the OGs of the police department, is that you can't get them to leave, and they don't want to help anybody move up, right? And he's like, you know, he's like police department and work in the sheriff's, you know, with the sheriff. You know, he said it's really tough, and part of one of the biggest issues is you have these people who have been in their positions for decades. And they don't want to allow other people to rise up, right? And they hinder them. And subhanAllah, racism is huge, right? So although they're miser and stingy with everyone, they're, you know, it can fluctuate, right? So they are more stingy with certain ethnic groups more than other ethnic groups. So they hold down other people who are not from their group, right? Who are not from their, whatever ethnic group or whatever it might be, they hold them down, right? And so racism is also a form, and that's why racism is rooted in kibr, right? Racism is kibr, is a form of kibr, right? And so when a person views their self in their ethnic group or whatever group they belong to, be it a religious group or sexism or classism or any of the isms, right? They view some party they belong to be superior to others. It's all kibr. And kibr is one of the roots of envy, right? So racism leads to also is a form of envy that shows from kibr, and so they become more envious. And subhanAllah, we see it in our nation, in our society, in the history of our nation till today, right? It's harder for people from certain backgrounds to rise in the ranks, right? And so this is all connected to envy. And that's what subhanAllah, Malcolm X, he said, after his experience with Islam and traveling and studying the deen, he's like, the root for racism is Islam. It really addresses it, not just on a institutional level or legal level, but it goes to the depth of racism, right? And we see, subhanAllah, the U.S., as far as our nation has come, with regards to our institutions and our laws and so on, the illnesses, you wonder how much of that has really changed, right? How much progress have people made in here? There is progress, right? But how much? And you need something more than just legal and institutional change. You need spiritual work, right? You need work of the heart. And that is where Islam provides an answer that you can't really find elsewhere. It's rooted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's rooted in our faith in God. And God is not changing. And the revelation is not corruptible. And so when you root your values and your principles and your morals in something that it does not change, your values become consistent. And there's no escape to manipulate those values or play with them, subhanAllah. But that's just a side note, right? How Islam is really embracing Islam in its entirety. Because unfortunately, us as Muslims, we also have our own problem as a Muslim, ummah and in our different societies, where oftentimes we're just obsessed with the performances of the rituals of Islam and the legal rulings of Islam, and we neglect the internal part of Islam. Even our religious groups, right? Those who are religious, you see that they neglect these internal sides, and that's why, subhanAllah, it's so important to bring these sciences back, to revive the study of Islam in this way, because it's not done enough, right? We need to look at this deen in a different way, beyond than just halal and haram, but really looking at the deeper lessons and beliefs and what it offers in purifying the heart and transforming the beliefs of people. Continuing with the two last paragraphs of this section, he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, curing this type is very difficult because other kinds of envy are the result of temporary, occasional causes which vanish according to the disappearance of their causes, while vice is deep-rooted and innate in the nature of the person. So he's saying this last one, right, with regards to shuh, he said this one is hard to cure because it's rooted in something that isn't in a context. He said there's other things that's very limited to a certain context. Maybe there's certain people or certain individuals or in a certain setting. But he said shuh is something rooted in the heart. If it's there, it's very hard to remedy. Right? You can't remedy the envy unless you remedy the shuh, the deeper problem. And then he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, the following are the causes of envy. They may be combined in one person to the extent that envy becomes an intrinsic part of the person and he cannot hide this characteristic. Most forms of envy are rarely the result of one cause alone, but are often the mixture of multiple causes. And next he gets into the remedy for envy, and then how to free one's heart from envy, and that'll be the end of this section, inshallah ta'ala. Any questions before we continue with the reading? Any thoughts that folks might have? Ustad Ayad?
I like when you explain the shock that the people have when certain people are chosen to be prophets.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it is, I know you explained some of it is from a place of envy or like kibia, thinking I'm better when I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
it, but is there a part of it that's from like self-deprecation? Because there are some ayats where they say, why didn't Ilahi send an angel, for example? And
I think that's connected to the shock. But what do you think? What were you asking? What other?
Would the self-deprecating be considered envy? Because you're looking down on yourself.
Yeah.
But then the example later you gave of the person who doesn't have authority, but they're angry at other people.
I don't know if it's like a degrading of the self. I think it's just more like not being able to. Sorry, this is for those who didn't hear the question. The sister is asking, Barakallahu fiha. Is it coming? Could when we said that envy can come from a place of like being in shock or ta'ajjub or wonder? Could that be like more like? Could that be related to like self-deprecating or degrading of the self? And she said the verse like they said, why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like send down an angel? Like why did he send a human being? It could be connected to that, but I feel like it's more related just to ta'ajjub. Like they can't fathom the fact that Allah is sending a human prophet. It just doesn't, to them it doesn't rationally make sense. Does that right? So they can't get their mind around that. And the Quran responds, right? The Quran responds, قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَلَائِكَةٌ يَمْشُونَ مُطْمَئِنِّينَ لَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَلَكًا رَسُولًا. I believe the verse is, tell them, if there were angels walking on the earth, then we would have sent down to them an angel prophet, an angel messenger. Right? So explain to them, like, the messenger is sent from the same species of the people that he sent to. More than that, all the prophets before, their prophets and messengers predominantly were sent from the same community. So we're not just saying species, but community, right? And the kuffar of the mushrikeen of Quraysh, some of them were arguing like, why is Allah sending a human messenger? It doesn't make sense. To them, it didn't make sense. Right? So it was that ta'ajjub. They were surprised, like this is happening. To them, they found it irrational. They didn't find it reasonable. And the Quran refuses this and refutes this and shows that, hey, your reason doesn't make sense. Right? Your belief is rooted in false reason. Right? And this is the same with Iblis. Right? When Iblis said that he had to prostrate to Adam, he believed that fire was better than dirt. So he's like, why am I prostrating to this human being made from dirt? And the scholars, they clarified, Iblis is real. First of all, Allah said it, right? So there shouldn't even be a question there. Allah commanded. But they said beyond that, actually, dirt is a greater element than fire. So even Iblis's reasoning was flawed. Like, he was incorrect in thinking that the element that he was made from is actually greater than the element that Adam alayhi salam was made from. So that was an error in his like it was a logical error that he made, right? And so some of these mushrikeen, they had that. They made this rational mistake in thinking like, oh no, like if God is gonna send a messenger of his own, they're thinking, well, God should send like his best creation, the most purest ones, who are the angels. Why would he send a human being? But they're missing the point of the messenger. The point of the messenger is to teach you. And so how can he relate to you if he's not from among you, like you, who shares the same experiences as you? Right? Among the many other purposes beyond messengerhood. So it was rooted in a false reasoning that they had. Ayan, did that answer
Yeah.
your question? Yeah, Wallahu alam. Okay, let's get into the remedy for envy, inshallah ta'ala. I want to finish this section tonight. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, envy is one of the most serious diseases of the heart. It cannot be cured without knowledge and action. So both knowledge and action. Curing envy with knowledge is to be certain that envy is injurious in this world and the next. So this is something the person must study, is to study the harms of envy, the dangers of envy. Because oftentimes the people who are most envious are people who have no awareness of like why this is so unhealthy, why this is so harmful. Even if we're just talking about from a worldly like perspective. Like it takes away your happiness if all you're doing is looking at other people and what they have and you want them to feel. You don't enjoy what you have, right? You're placing your happiness in the hands of other people. So if they do well, you're miserable. If they fail, you're happy. Isn't that such, like, how much power are you giving these people over your life? Liberate yourself. If you don't want to do it for God's sake, if you don't want to be fearful of Allah subhanahu, for your own well-being, it's not healthy for you, stop. It's not. So he's saying learn about how injurious and harmful envy is in this world, and of course with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. And now, subhanAllah, you become obsessed, right? You become obsessed. All of what you try to do is like, oh, what will people, how about other people? How about other, to the point that, subhanAllah, a person loses themselves. Like, hey, can you stop for a moment and think about what you actually want? Stop thinking about other people. Why are you letting that define your decisions? Isn't that such a terrible way to live? That your decisions are defined by other people's opinions or other people's accomplishments or failures, right? So he said, Imam Ghazali said, like, we really, like a person who wants to remedy their heart from envy, like study it. Study the harms of envy and the dangers of envy in this world and the next. And he also says, rahimahullah ta'ala, but also remembering that no harm reaches the envied person. Right, so like, you're not even going to accomplish anything. Right, your efforts are, even if you make efforts, they're very futile. Right, like the munafiqeen of Medina, like the mushrikeen of Mecca. What did they do to the Prophet ﷺ? At the end, he thrived, his message flourished, his followers grew, and there, people talk about them in history books only to talk about how wicked they were. It's like, look what you did for yourself. Should you have not lived a more fulfilling life than just be obsessed with the failure of the orphan of Bani Hashim? For them, that's how they saw it. The munafiqeen of Medina, they saw the man of Quraysh who's, that's taking our community, just very envious. And then as well as many of the Yahud of Medina, very envious. Like, oh, how can he be an Arab prophet? It's like, why are you, like, what is that accomplishing for you? You're not hurting him, you're just hurting yourself, right? So he says, so also understanding that no harm reaches the envied person, on the contrary, it benefits him in both worlds. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the person for what they endure when other people envy them. And it only makes them superior to them, right? It just shows, like, is this a sign that, yeah, they are actually better than you? Because you're jealous of them. Like, you've just admitted, like, their superiority. Like, why are you giving them that value, right? So you're actually just giving them the thing that you want to take from them. So it benefits him in both worlds. If you believe in this concept deeply and sincerely, and if you are not at peace with the hidden wicked part in you, and if you are not at peace with the hidden wicked part in you, there is no doubt that you can get rid of the feelings of envy successfully. And so the first thing is, like, a person must see, like, have this perspective, like, okay, this is bad, I don't want it, I understand the harms of envy in this dunya and akhirah, and that I'm not harming this, it's not pretty much creating any benefit for me, so why be envious? Why even let this grow and remain in my heart. Envy harms your faith because it is a sign that you object to the divine qadr, right? And that is why envy is so problematic, right? Because it contradicts our belief in Allah's qadr. Do you believe that Allah ordained this, or do you believe that this person ordained this? If you believe that Allah ordained this, then why are you envious? You're only envious because you're lacking the conviction that Allah ordained this, and you believe that this person ordained this for themselves. So he's saying that envy contradicts a person's belief in divine qadr, that you dislike the favors people have received from Allah, and that you denied Allah's justice and mercy, which are a part of His wisdom. Denying Allah's blessings on others is a major sin, and it negates the core of your true belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's more serious, and that is why one of the remedies for envy is when you see something, you say, MashaAllah. So what does MashaAllah mean? I know we always just say it like, just habitually like MashaAllah, MashaAllah. But MashaAllah literally means this is what Allah willed. This is what Allah willed. So you're reminding yourself of your iman. Don't look at it from the perspective of the world. You and this human being are competing for this thing, and they got it and you didn't. Look at it, Allah has willed this, it's done. Allah willed this. This is Allah's ordainment. Is that clear? This is, of course, post-event, right? Prior to the event, we don't know what Allah decreed. So you're going to work hard. Does that make sense? Prior, you don't know what Allah decreed. You're going to work very hard. But post-outcome, now you know what Allah decreed. Allah decreed that He got it and you didn't. Or that they got it and you didn't. And alhamdulillah, mashallah, done. And then to increase your remedy, to remedy envy that might show in the heart, you say, mashallah, tabarakallah. And then you add that Allah, all good comes from Allah. So if this is what Allah ordained, not this that He ordained it and maybe like I hate that He ordained this. No, He ordained it, and whatever Allah ordained is good. So you increase mashallah with what? Tabarakallah. And then you make dua for them, for that individual. Now you're looking at your relationship with this human being, and you're like, okay, actually this is a person I have love for. They're a Muslim, they're somebody I care about, or they're just a human being, and I'm not a person of hate. I'm a person of just compassion and care for everybody. May Allah bless for you your wealth and your health and your promotion, and may Allah increase you in all good. Like you make dua for them, that Allah grants them more, right? And so that further allows you to look at this person with a sense of love rather than a sense of hate. Love is the remedy, right? Because envy is coming from hate. So to not be envious, you have to learn to love, right? You love other people. So now you make dua for them. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, so we were saying, what's more serious, you have deceived a believer, stopped advising him, and behaved in a way that contradicts the way of righteous people and the prophets of Allah in their love of good for all people. Additionally, you have participated in Satan's handiwork and that of the unbelievers who love the believers to be afflicted with misfortunes and that they lose their blessings. This is the rancor in the heart that devours the reward of good deeds, such as fire devours straw and wipes them out as day wipes out night. So here Imam Ghazali is explaining the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, hasad takes from the hasanat of a person the way fire devours straw. He's saying this is the meaning of the hadith when it shows in this way. Envy harms life. This harm lies in the fact that envy causes you pain in this life and makes you, your enemies, live in utter vexation. You are in a state of anxiety because of the blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endowed on them or the afflictions He lightens from them. In this way you live in a ceaseless state of distress and worry, suffering, because what you desire for your enemies and what your enemies desire for you. It will not take long until you are surprised to find that the calamity that you wish to befall your enemy fills you with distress, yet your enemy will lose nothing. So here Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he speaks about that. He speaks about the day of Qiyamah. I would say read that. The effect, and he says in the following paragraph, the effective remedy to purify the soul from envy is to force yourself to behave in a way that contradicts the behavior associated with envy. If your soul is inclined to dispraise the envied one, you should praise them. If your soul is inclined to treat them haughtily, you should compel it to treat them modestly and even apologize to them. If your soul is inclined not to offer goodness to the envied one, you should compel it to do more goodness to him. In this way, envy will be severed and uprooted from the heart. Our scholars, subhanAllah, and this is, we see this early, even during the time of Sahaba, where if they found themselves having discomfort with something Allah commanded, they would do the opposite of that thing until their feelings are in line with what Allah said rather than what they originally desired. Does that make sense? So if you're like, oh, this person, you want to put them down, he's saying the remedy for that is to go actually praise them. Even if you dislike this person and they're your co-worker and you're competing against them, but they got the promotion, go and praise them. Man, you're amazing. I've seen how hard you've been working. You've really been putting in the time. Your performance this year was really impressive. Good for you. I'm really proud. Congratulations. Right? Like, do the opposite of the thing that you initially want to do, which is like put them down, or you want to afflict harm on them. You do them a favor, right? Do them good. And so he's saying, remedy the heart by doing the opposite of that which your nafs is calling you to. It's hard, but this is one of the ways of humbling the self, right? When the self is pulling us one way, he's saying, teach yourself to do the opposite. Yes?
Okay. I can do a slight quick example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We're at the end of time. Can I put you on hold? I apologize. Okay. I just want to wrap this up, inshallah ta'ala. It is known that praising Allah. Okay, we'll finish that. And then the following page, he says, one should beware of the evil Satan whispers to him. Beware of treating him, the envied one, modestly, as this will degrade you. As this will degrade you into his eyes. He might think you do so out of weakness, hypocrisy, or fear, and might look down upon you as an inferior. And so he said, this is like shaitan might come to you and whisper this to you, like, hey, don't, if you like give him a compliment, he might think like, oh, like I beat you, kind of like, think less of you. So he said, this is a trap of shaitan. That is definitely one of Satan's tricks. It is known that treating people kindly, whether out of affection or out of genuine love, removes enmity and hatred from their hearts. In this way, hearts get rid of envy and harmony settles again in the heart. This results in relieving the pain that is associated with envy, grief, and hatred. And so I think we'll finish that there. I'll leave you guys to read the rest of it. And then in this last part, inshallah ta'ala, maybe we'll read the first paragraph and then we'll jump to the end and then conclude, inshallah. He says in the first paragraph, he who hurts others is detested. Thus, how to free one's heart from envy. He says, he who hurts others is detested. Thus, if the one who hurts you was granted a favor, loving him is against man's nature unless what pleases or displeases him is considered to be equal to you. This is hard, right? This is hard to attain. You might find that neither case is equal because Satan will incite you to envy him. If you were overpowered by that feeling and it shows in your behavior, know that you are still envious. And so subhanAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our hearts. I hope that's making sense to folks, but if not, inshallah, read over it once or twice because it's really deep. If you manage to refrain from words and deeds that are entirely based on envy, while your heart longs to eliminate the blessing without any inner resistance to this feeling, know that you are envious and rebellious. That is because envy is an act of the heart and not behavior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Al-Ansar and defames the hypocrites and the unbelievers in the following 3 verses respectively. So here he's saying, rahimahullah ta'ala, that even if a person doesn't do anything envious or say anything envious, but deep down in their heart, they're still, like uneasy about this person's success, or they find some sort of relief or joy in their suffering. He said, no, you're still envious. Because envy is an act of the heart. Don't let the fact that you were able to regulate your behavior lead you to feel that you're not envious. Now, Sharia-wise, are you sinful for that? Are you sinful for that? You didn't act on it. You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. You're not sinful as long as you don't let that flourish, grow in your heart. Does that make sense? If it comes and you're like, astaghfirullah, Allah forgive me, purify my heart, khalas. There's no blame there because you can't control the subtle feelings of your heart. You can work to purify it as much as possible, but you can't control your feelings. It's beyond your control. But if you let it, grow and fluster, right? And you're letting it sit and you're entertaining it and you're thinking about it, then at that point now you're letting your heart, you're letting your mind think about that act and you're entertaining that emotion. Then at that point it becomes a sin. And so he talks about the state of the Sahaba and the hypocrites, the opposites of them. And so we can leave that there. And I think this is a good place to end it, inshallah ta'ala. Read the rest of the chapter. Next week, or next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, we'll get into self-admiration. And inshallah ta'ala, so I would say read, let's see how long this next chapter is. It's not too long. It's I think we can finish it all in one lesson. No, actually, no, the remedies are a little longer than the beginning of it. So it's up to 263. I would say try to read all of it if you can. If not, then I'll try to get most of it done for our next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, from 249 to 263. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.